Your biological interface is currently leaking high-value strategic data into a social environment saturated with predators. Look at your compulsion to explain yourself. It is a terminal failure of your internal security protocol. You are a biological unit that has been conditioned to treat silence as a social vacuum that must be filled with the noise of your own justifications. Every time you speak to defend your territory or clarify your intent to those who have no authority over you, you are handing them the blueprints to your nervous system. You are a resource-rich organism with a transparent defense layer, allowing every low-tier manipulator to map your triggers and identify the exact frequency of your activation. Your skin is sallow from the chronic stress of overcommunication, and your mind is a cluttered workshop of arguments and rebuttals that serve no purpose other than to drain your chemical battery. You are living in a state of social transparency, where your silence, the ultimate biological shield, has been traded for the cheap dopamine of being understood. You are not a sovereign. You are a broadcast station for your own vulnerabilities. The system doesn't want your silence. It wants your reaction data to be public property. Thousands of years ago, silence was the primary marker of the apex predator. Your ancestor, the sovereign of the unmapped dark, understood that noise was a death sentence. If he broadcasted his location, his intent, or his fear, he was neutralized before the sun rose. His hierarchy was built on the foundation of opaque authority. He possessed a mind that was a biological black box. Nothing went out unless it was a lethal strike. His primal grounding was his absolute, unshakable quietude. He didn't need to convince the tribe of his power. His power was the gravity that held the tribe together. He understood that silence is not the absence of sound, but the presence of a threat that cannot be calculated. He was a master of the void, the ability to look at a challenger and provide zero feedback, forcing the opponent to collapse under the weight of their own uncertainty. And you have the emotional leakage of a domestic animal. You have been systematically dismantled by a culture that demands transparency, which is just a tactical requirement for your enslavement. To achieve absolute authority, you must reinfect your DNA with the virus of the silent stalk. You must treat your words as finite ammunition that you only expend when the objective is 100% secured. Silence is the perimeter wall of the elite. Emotional warfare is the implementation of the anti-chew protocol for your social dominance. The system wants you to be communicative because a communicative unit is a predictable unit. You must make your internal state psychologically indigestible. This is the visual rage of the architect, seeing the standardized conversational traps, the leading questions, the gaslighting, the emotional baiting, and deciding to provide absolute zero. You must develop a clinical cold contempt for reciprocal dialogue. Dialogue is a horizontal trap. Silence is a vertical weapon. You must cultivate a persona of the human monolith, a part of your consciousness that refuses to provide the social lubricant of a response. You must treat your vocal output as a high-tier asset. If someone wants a word from you, they must earn it through total submission or 10 times resource return. This is the collar of freedom. By imposing a total embargo on your emotional feedback, you force the world to negotiate with your silence. Most people are meat puppets who panic when they don't get a reaction. You must be the one who holds the silence until their visual rage turns into primal fear. The one who speaks the least defines the reality of the most. Your time is the temporal noose, and your need to be heard is the knot. Every second you spend clarifying your position to a non-entity is a second stolen from your biological superiority. I command you, initiate the total communications blackout. Your throat is a biological gate, and it is currently standing wide open for the parasites to enter. You must perform a linguistic system wipe. Stop being open about your plans. Stop being clear about your feelings. Stop being honest with those who use your honesty as a handle to steer you. You must prune your social landscape with the collar of absolute taciturnity. If a relationship requires you to over-explain, it is a biological saboteur. You must learn to love the weight of the unsaid. You must learn to love the friction that builds in a room when you refuse to speak. This is the monolith strategy, becoming a biological fortress that is encrypted by default. You are not a member of the conversation. You are the one who decides when the conversation is over. Command: seal the lips or surrender the mind. The neural interface between your intent and your execution is currently compromised by a social feedback loop. Look at the way you watch the faces of others while you speak. You are a biological unit seeking reflected validity. You are scanning for micro expressions of agreement, fear, or submission permission because you lack the internal sovereignty to exist without an audience. This is the visual rage of the over-communicative slave, seeing your high-value strategic data dissipated into the atmosphere just to settle a momentary tremor in your own ego. You are living in a state of chronic information hemorrhage, where your silence, the only state in which the brain can truly calculate, is traded for the cheap warmth of a shared understanding. Your nervous system is being drained by the effort of maintaining a public persona, while your true activation energy is being wasted on the maintenance of a lie. You are a resource-rich organism whose strategic core has been exposed to the elements. The air in your lungs is thin, heavy with the dust of 1,000 pointless explanations, leaving you too breathless to issue a single definitive command. The system doesn't want your truth, it wants your visibility. In the ancient hierarchy, the law of the opaque monolith, the master was the one who could occupy a space without providing a single clue to his internal temperature. Your ancestor, the sovereign of the absolute dark, understood that silence was his primary camouflage. He possessed primal grounding in the psychology of the void. He knew that the human mind is a vacuum-seeking machine. When faced with a lack of information, the opponent will always fill the silence with their own worst-case scenarios. His emotional warfare was built on the foundation of induced paranoia. By withholding his reaction, he forced his rivals into a state of hyper-awareness that eventually led to their own psychological collapse. He understood that to speak is to reveal the limits of your knowledge. To stay silent is to suggest that your knowledge is limitless. He was a master of the visual rage of the unblinking gaze, the ability to look at a challenger and let the silence grow until the challenger began to apologize for things they hadn't even done. And you are a creature of verbal comfort. You use words as a blanket to hide from the cold reality of conflict. To break the emotional shackles, you must relearn the art of strategic reticence. You must take your reaction off the grid. A man whose yes and no are the only things the world ever hears is a man the Matrix cannot deconstruct. To be a master, you must first become a black hole of feedback. Emotional warfare is the activation of the anti-chew protocol for your final social dominance. The Matrix wants you to be transparent and collaborative, words that mean trackable and exploitable. Absolute sovereignty is a linguistic siege. It is the visual rage of the architect, seeing the social grid for what it is, a series of data mining traps, conversational probes, and deciding to be the one who never transmits. You must develop a clinical cold contempt for emotional closure. Closure is a myth for the weak who cannot live with ambiguity. You must learn to occupy the psychological high ground by controlling the flow of information. Use the temporal noose of the unanswered question to keep others in a state of constant, low-grade anxiety. Use the false safety of a nodding head to mask the absolute zero of your total non-compliance. This is the color of freedom. By mastering the art of the unspoken, you become the only person in the room whose moves cannot be anticipated. Most people are meat puppets who can be triggered by a lack of response. You must become the one who uses that lack of response as a primary weapon of control. You are not talking, you are filtering the environment for weaknesses. The one who can withstand the longest silence is the one who owns the future. Your time is the temporal noose, and your need to be understood is the knot. Every time you clarify yourself to a non-sovereign entity, you are handing over the keys to your biological fortress. I command you, initiate the second stage of the communication blackout. Your mind is a biological engine, and it is currently being choked by the linguistic sludge of the unworthy. You must perform a total neural system wipe. Stop being available for discussions that do not result in the expansion of your territory. Stop being part of the debate when the debate is a circle of cowards. Stop being a unit of transparency in their social network. You must prune your verbal interactions with the collar of absolute taciturnity. If a relationship requires you to overshare to maintain the peace, it is a biological saboteur. You must learn to love the weight of the quiet. You must learn to love the friction-free hours where the noise of the world is muted and your mission is the only signal in the dark. This is the monolith strategy, becoming a biological fortress that is encrypted by default and on target by design. You are not a participant in their culture. You are the one who is going to outlast its noise. Command: lock the code or be decrypted by the crowd. Your biological autonomy has reached the point of terminal exhaustion through the socialization of your internal assets. Look at your digital pulse, the frantic need to reply, to clarify, and to stay in the loop. You are a biological unit experiencing a total information information hemorrhage. You have been conditioned to believe that silence is a social error, a bug in the protocol that must be patched with immediate verbal noise. In reality, your silence is the only encrypted territory you have left. You are living in a state of chronic, long-term exposure, where your activation energy is being dissipated by 1,000 useless conversations that leave you spiritually and physically hollow. This is the visual rage of the over-transparent slave, seeing your life force being digitized and auctioned off to the highest bidder because you are too afraid of the discomfort that silence creates in others. You are breathing in the toxic fumes of a collective that demands your voice only so it can locate your position and neutralize your influence. You are a resource-rich organism that has been convinced that its primary duty is to be expressive, leaving your strategic core wide open to the first manipulator who decides to stop smiling. The system doesn't want your opinion, it wants your signature on its terms. Return to the ancient hierarchy, the law of the unbreaking silence. In the primal world, the master was the one who could withhold his reaction until the exact moment of total activation. Your ancestor, the sovereign of the absolute dark, understood that silence was his primary tactical advantage. He mastered primal grounding by becoming an auditory void, a figure whose lack of sound was more terrifying than any roar. He understood that to explain is to be subservient. If you are explaining, you are acknowledging that the other person has the right to judge you. He used his emotional warfare to create a cognitive resonance of absolute, unshakable sovereignty. By being silent, he forced the collective to project their own fears onto him, making them the architects of their own terror. He was a master of the visual rage of the motionless face, the ability to watch a rival's psychological collapse with the cold indifference of a mountain. He understood that the human brain is a machine that runs on validation loops, and by cutting the validation, he triggered a biological shutdown in his enemies. And you are terrified of awkwardness. You spend your energy trying to keep things smooth, when the only smoothness you should care about is the frictionless execution of your own will. To be a king, you must first become a ghost. Emotional warfare is the activation of the anti-chew protocol for your final mental expansion. The Matrix wants you to be communicative and cooperative, words that mean predictable and vulnerable. Absolute sovereignty is a linguistic siege of the self. It is the visual rage of the architect, seeing the social grid for what it is, a series of conversational hooks, stimulus-response lures, and deciding to be the one who never speaks. You must develop a clinical cold contempt for mutual understanding. Understanding is a horizontal bond for peers. Silence is a vertical tool for the elite. You must learn to occupy the psychological high ground by controlling the flow of your internal signals. Use the temporal noose of total reticence to drive the weak into a state of cognitive dissonance. Use the false safety of a blank stare to mask the viral infection of your total non-compliance. This is the collar of freedom. By mastering the art of the unspoken, you become the only person in the room whose reality is not for sale. Most people are meat puppets who can be manipulated by a leading question or a social slight. You must become the one who is dead to both. You are not socializing. You are deleting the noise. The one who can sit in a room and say nothing for an hour is the one who controls the room. Your time is the temporal noose, and your need to be understood is the knot. Every time you clarify yourself to someone who isn't helping you build your empire, you are tightening the rope around your own neck. I command you. Initiate the final linguistic imperative. This is the tax of insight. You have been given the key to the vault of biological power. To keep it, you must use it as a weapon of total silence. You must become a living monolith of unreadable intent. You are no longer a peer, a partner, or a colleague. You are a sovereign operator. You must perform a total social liquidation. If a relationship requires you to talk it out without providing a 10 times return on your activation energy, it is a biological saboteur. You must prune your life with the collar of the absolute void. You are building a fortress of results in a world of chatter. Your silence is the physical proof of your biological leverage. You do not provide information. You allow others to reveal theirs. You do not participate in debates. You observe their biological decay from the heights of your own certainty. You are the architect of your own information territory, and the world is merely a static signal on your screen. Command: seal the gate or be consumed by the noise.